When it comes to the words disclosure and UFOs, they have been thrown around these past years like confetti at a wedding. But what is the disclosure movement, and what exactly is the outcome they await? Let's reveal all here on Things Visible and Invisible. The Paradigm Research Group was founded in 1996. Its purpose is to end what it sees as a government-imposed embargo on the truth behind the UFO phenomena. Since then, it has advocated around the world about the implications of formal disclosure, that is, world governments speaking of an extraterrestrial presence that engages with the human race. And Steve Bassett is the Executive Director of the Paradigm Research Group, and he joins me down the line from his home in Washington, D.C. Steve, welcome to Things Visible and Invisible.
It's great to be with you, as always.
Steve, it'd be fair to say that the word disclosure and UFOs go together like a horse and carriage. They're constantly being spoken about, but never more so than at the start of this decade. Since 2022, I think, the congressional hearings in the United States, or interest from governments in the United States, has accelerated at a rate we never thought imaginable, say, 15 years ago. Why do you think that is?
Well, first of all, disclosure is a term that not everybody's familiar with. I'm sure they understand the basic term, disclosure, to reveal, to find out, and so forth. But I made my contribution to this whole affair back in 2001, 2000, when I decided that UFO cover-up was not the right term for the activism, and it wasn't accurate. We needed a name for what was going on and a name for the goal. What were we trying to achieve? What was the point of all this? Why don't we just sit quietly and wait for the government to tell us what it's going to tell us? So I came up with the word capital D, disclosure, a proper noun. And it refers to a date, an event, like Earth Day, right? Capital D, disclosure. And what is it? I self-defined it, so I can never be wrong. It is the formal confirmation of let's go with a technologically advanced non-human, right, engagement of our world by the heads of state of nations, period. Almost certainly starting with one head of state, since it would be very difficult to, how would you say, arrange in advance 3 or 4 heads of state to come together to announce it, because the whole thing would leak like crazy. So one head of state will start this. That is disclosure. The moment those words come out of that head of state's mouth, we have had disclosure of the extraterrestrial presence. Finally, 78 years after Roswell. That's what is going on. That's what is important. And the disclosure process, capital D disclosure process, is what I use often to refer to the activist movement, though there wasn't much of an activist movement for most of the last 78 years. But in the first 30 years or so, it was less, not really activism. It was a lot of citizens on their own, with their own money, trying to investigate, trying to find out what this is, trying to prove it, really. Many of them knew what it was. They'd seen it firsthand, but they wanted to prove it because they felt if they proved it, the heads of state of the United States, and of course the UK, and all the rest of the major nations, the nuke nations and so forth, would go, oh yes, of course, we're being engaged by, which I believe are extraterrestrials. I'm pretty confident that's what they are. Not advanced, technologically advanced non-humans who happen to be from other stars, which makes them extraterrestrial, and that's what I like to use. The goal was to get that announcement, and mostly they were trying to prove it. We'll prove to you there's ETs here, and then you'll have to acknowledge it. The problem was the US government, the UK government, knew about the presence of extraterrestrials no later than 47, and possibly sooner. And I'm not joking around. The UK has always known that there's an extraterrestrial presence. Every single prime minister going all the way back to Churchill, has known there's an extraterrestrial presence. Something to keep in mind. All right. And so the disclosure process is getting to that announcement. And that is actually a political thing. And the reason when I got into this issue finally late in life in 96, I spent some time with John Mack's a group. They were a research organization in Cambridge, Massachusetts, but it wasn't a fit for me. I'm not really a researcher, but it got me into it. It got me excited. I met my first contactees, and I realized what I had to do was engage the politics because there was almost nothing going on in that area because it's not a scientific problem that needs to be proved, right? It is a political problem that needs to be a change of policy. The truth embargo, which is another term that I came up with in service to this effort, the truth embargo is the term I came up with for the UFO cover-up. UFO cover-up's the wrong term, all right? So I call it the truth, I'm sorry, for the effort to cover this up, truth embargo. And so the political solution was ending the national security policy of the United States to deny, obfuscate, interfere with, undermine, demean, and stigmatize the idea of an extraterrestrial presence, efforts to find it out, or whatever. All nonsense, it's all silly. That truth embargo is still in place to this day, 78 years later. That doesn't change the fact that every prime minister, every president of the United States, and probably every leader of China and the Soviet Union, Russia, have known about the ET presence all along. But the United States made the decision that it was not appropriate yet to tell the truth to the American people. All of its allies from World War II, particularly the UK, went along with that because at that time, in 1947, we were the most powerful nation in the world. We had the most nuclear weapons. We had been key to defeating the Axis powers. They deferred to us for, I think, obvious reasons. The Soviet Union and China did not want to go there because they were building an ideologically controlled state, very authoritarian, and they had no interest in their citizens knowing about a larger world, other beings, other civilizations that would distract them from the party line, from basically doing what they are told. And so they have not disclosed either. So this disclosure process, 78 years on, is about to win. It's about to happen. We're very close to getting that announcement. But most of the 78 years was a slog. I mean, it was tough.
Yeah.
It was running into the wind. But in 2017, the wind changed and we were running with the wind at our back, and meaning the movement was running with the wind at its back. Why did that happen? It happened because 10 members of the military intelligence complex or community in this country, whose whole career was involved in various matters in various ways of defending the United States, right? In research, intelligence, you name it. All 10 of them made the decision to come forward together as part of a new organization that was announced in October of 2017. They represented, as far as I'm concerned, everyone within our military intelligence complex who, while keeping it to themselves, had arrived at the conclusion that this policy of embargo, this truth embargo or giant lie, whatever you want to call it, had served its purpose. Its shelf life was over. We needed to move on. And this was how they were going to help that happen. When they came out in October, I happened to be in the UK for about an 8-month extended period, as it were. I learned about it and realized I need to get back to the US. It took me about 2 months, but before I got back, the first development after these 10 people came forward, which was facilitated by several of their members, dropped. What was it? A major story in the New York Times. 2 print editions, 16, 17 December, and it dropped on the internet December 16. And the internet included videos provided to the New York Times of gun camera clips of intercepts of unidentified objects. They had never released these. No country had ever released these, and I assure you, every country with a defense force has gun camera footage of these objects fairly up close that they have taken and they have vaulted it. But these three were released to the New York Times, and they have now been seen by hundreds, if not billions, of views. That
Well,
was the real break. And from that point forward, we've been moving steadily towards the inevitable announcement from a head of state. Now, what's remarkable about this is that, and this is the tides of history, it's not really, it's a coincidence mostly, but it's the tides of history. This 7 years since 2017 has been, how would you say, challenging, difficult. There has been in the United States massive political upheaval. We have had the worst pandemic since the early 1900s, killing millions. We have had the worst war in Europe since World War II. And in particularly in the United States, we've had extraordinary political upheaval, literally changing the platforms on which we operate. It has been tumultuous. It has been difficult. Yeah, a lot of people have struggled with what's happened. It's been a tough 7 years, a lot tougher for those fighting that war and other parts of the world. I get that. But in terms of the major nations, it has been challenging. And in spite of that, the disclosure process I referred to has continued to move forward. It is never backed up. It's just moved forward slowly sometimes, sometimes faster, heading towards disclosure. In other words, the policy of disclosure is what I like to call a dead policy walking. It's over. They just don't know it yet. They haven't acknowledged it yet.
well,
Now, at this point, and I'll go into this in more detail, we are right there.
okay. Well,
That confirmation from a head of state tomorrow or next week or 30 days from now. And I know why, because that's all I do is follow the political process of this issue while also following the public sentiments and the public engagement of it.
sure.
Very active on the in social media, on the internet, well, certain social media.
Well,
I'm able to get, and I follow all of the media coverage of this issue of any substance.
okay.
To the extent that on my website right now, there are links to 16,000 articles by professional publications, journalism on this subject. And a very limited number of those articles are debunking or ridiculing the issue. And in the last 7 years, virtually none are doing that. And so that's what I have been doing for 30 years now. And that's why I'm probably in a better position than most to say just how close to disclosure we are, though I do have associates that would disagree with me.
okay.
That's kind of where things are in a more general sense.
Well, that's fascinating, Steve, as background. Though there's a number of questions, or I'd like to unpack some of what you've been talking about. First of all, answer me this: the embargo, as you term it, the government embargo about this information. What is your understanding of why that was and is in place?
Okay. If you might turn up your volume a little bit, I'm having a bit of a problem. But your question is one of the most important. What?
Do you want me to repeat?
Complex question and a complex answer. There will be thousands of books written about the answer to that question. There will be a major streaming series, I assure you. It'll be called Truth Embargo, I think, and I'm dying to be an advisor to that. I've actually made a few efforts already, but that's another area of engagement. I have a basic answer that I give. I'm sure the historians, when they have access to all of the files, multiple countries, everything is out in the open finally, which is what disclosure intends to accomplish. They will have a more nuanced answer. But mine is fairly, I think, basic and understandable by just an average person that's not steeped in this issue. It goes like this. The Cold War ends with 2 nuclear weapons, only ones ever used to kill people. It's a major event. There had been sightings prior to this. The Foo Fighters were all over the theaters of war, following airplanes around, never hurting them, never bothering them, always reported. They're what I like to call plasma balls, but exactly what they are is not clear. But they were called the Foo Fighters, French for foot fire. There had been other sightings, but not so much in the first half of the 20th century. But after those bombs dropped, suddenly the activity intensified. Many more sightings were being some were being seen and some reported, but it was early, right? So it wasn't an avalanche, but they were turning up, and there were articles kind of being written. 2 years, almost 2 years exactly after those bombs were dropped, two vehicles, I believe, is what the ultimate explanation will be, collided in a massive thunderstorm in New Mexico. And I've been in the middle of one of those, let me tell you, they are fierce, and crashed. The most important one was the crash north of Roswell. And when that debris was found and brought into town, the head of the base, which was the only nuclear base in the world at the time, made the decision that this is pretty interesting and sent out a press release announcing that they had captured or had a flying saucer. As it happens, there was a second debris field that had most of the saucer and the bodies, but that wasn't found until a little later, so that wasn't in the press release. And so consequently, at that moment, everything changed. It was outed. There were many articles printed around the country of this, and thus we really begin the modern UAP era. But what was the government going to do? And so when the report went up to General Ramey, probably first, and then passed on to the White House and to the Secretary of Defense, they had an immediate decision to make, and they only had hours to make it. Do we confirm that, yeah, this is one of those devices? And by the way, at some point, the White House knows about the crash debris, the other crash debris field, and the dead bodies. It didn't take long, and their decision is, what do we do? This is one of the most important decisions any head of state has ever made. It fell to President Truman, and he made the decision that, given that they did not know much about what's going on, though it turns out they may have had a vehicle slightly earlier than 47, that they still did not know enough to simply go to the public and say, oh yeah, we're not alone, and there's extraterrestrials engaging us. We need time. We need time to consider it, to think about the implications and so forth. Totally reasonable thing to do. And so they initially overturned that press release. And Ramey held a quick press conference that evening, said it's a weather balloon, and they stepped back to contemplate what to do. But there was another problem going on. By 47, they knew pretty much where things were going to go in terms of relationships between the United States and the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union had carved out an awful lot of territory. By 47, Winston Churchill had already stated there was an Iron Curtain across Europe, and we were fully aware that the Soviet Union had the atom bomb secrets, the hydrogen bombs plans, as it were, and were going to build both of them, and that they were also developing missiles because they had their own paperclip German scientists. And so they pretty much correctly concluded that very soon you're going to have a nuclear-armed communist enemy against the West, and we were going to be in a whole new world with incredible risk of a third world war that would be nuclear. And as they began to realize it, they had to put off whether or not to tell the people about this non-human presence. See where that goes. Maybe we would have had some fine diplomacy and negotiated our way out of that mess and gotten together and came to an understanding, decided let's don't have a nuclear world with ultimately 9 nuclear countries and at one point 86,000 nuclear weapons stockpiled. Maybe they could have had a good time. Don't know. But each year that followed, from 47 on. It got worse and worse and worse, and we entered what we call the Cold War, right? And the nuclear arms race, which is nothing like that had happened in the history of the human race.
Okay.
Nothing like that. The nuclear arms race was not just a new, better bow and arrow that allowed some, ancient society.
That's right.
Another one simply because they had chariots and the other ones didn't. No, this was a technology capable of taking the civilization back to the Stone Age, and increasingly we were mortal enemies, and so they pushed it further. From 1947 to 86, the number of nuclear weapons increased to 86,000. The number of countries grew to 3, 4, 5, 6, and ultimately 9. And so that cemented that policy.
Yeah.
In other words, we do not know what confirming that we are not alone, and we actually have non-human engagement going on in multiple craft coming and going wherever the hell they want, because we don't know how the outcome will be post-announcement, post-disclosure.
Right.
There are unknown unknowns here.
Yep.
That could destabilize this mutual assured destruction balance that we've created, which prevents us from attacking each other unless somebody makes a mistake. And of course, that never happens. And so we just can't do it. And so ultimately, the nuclear arms race and the fundamental relationship that developed initially between the United States and the Soviet Union, and now has become the United States, Russia, and China. Russia and China are coming together, being forced together by incredibly bad diplomacy. It's not easy for them to do this, but what has happened is that from 1947 to 2017, in those 70 years, the awareness of the issue, the public-private research, the documentaries, the books, the witnesses that have come forward, this massive amount of evidence, some of which is behind me in these books, but I tell you, there's thousands more than those. And the rise of global communication and person action and the social media and email, all of that has put excruciating pressure on this policy of embargo, and it's collapsing.
Okay.
In other words, it's just collapsing.
Absolutely.
Whether they like it or not, whether they have less or more knowledge about the unknown unknowns that could happen, there is nothing they can do to stop it now. And we are going to have that announcement. And then we will see what happens in this world. Absolutely. Not every living person on this planet knows that there's other intelligent species in the galaxy. We're not the only one. Some of them are actually visiting us now.
Okay, Steve, that is a fantastic overview of where we're up to now. But unfortunately, the clock has beaten us. So tell people where they can find out more about you and the work that you are engaged in.
All of my work is at paradigmresearchgroup.org. Paradigm standard spelling. It's paradigmresearchgroup.org. You can subscribe to my email list there. You can also donate to Paradigm Research Group. It is a nonprofit for American citizens, right? And you can, there's a lot of material that I think will be helpful. So that's my principal base of operation.
Okay, for now, Steve, thank you so much for coming on Things Visible and Invisible.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Things Visible and Invisible. We're dedicated to uncovering phenomena that challenge our understanding of reality, from ancient enigmas and paranormal encounters to scientific anomalies and forgotten histories. If you enjoyed this journey into the mysterious and unexplained, please consider subscribing to our channel and hitting the notification bell to stay updated on future explorations. Have a personal experience or story that aligns with our investigations? We'd love to hear from you. Visit our website at tvi.show and reach out through our contact form. While we can't feature every submission, we review them all, and your story might be featured in an upcoming episode. To support our continued investigations, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter or channel member. Your contributions make these explorations possible and give you access to exclusive content, early releases, and monthly behind-the-scenes discussions with our team. Don't forget to check out our merch store. We've got everything from TVI-branded t-shirts and hoodies to stickers and coffee mugs, perfect for showing your support while keeping the mysteries close. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time as we continue to explore the things visible and invisible.